Functions are devices for grouping statements so that they can be easily run more than once in a program. Functions maximize code reuse and minimize code redundancy. Functions enable dividing larger tasks into smaller chunks, an approach that is called procedural decomposition. Functions are written using the def statement. You can send the result object back to the caller using the return statement. Let's define an add function. So we first type the def keyword. Our add function is going to take two input arguments, which are a and b. We can calculate a sum by saying, let's call that mySum. Let's define that as a plus b. And finally, we use the return statement to return mySum to the caller of the function. The way I would use this function is as follows. I can just type the name of the function. Inside parentheses, I have to provide both of the two inputs, let's say 12 and 15. And Python returns the sum of those two numbers, 27. As a general rule, all names created or assigned in a function are local to that function, and they exist only while the function runs. To modify the value of a global variable from inside a function, you can use the global statement. Arguments to Python functions are matched by position. Let's take a look at that, what that means. If we define a function, mySum, which has two arguments, a and b, here we would have the code of the function. When I call my sum function, perhaps with numbers 2 and 3, the following happens. The value 2 inside the function will be represented by the variable a, and the value 3 will be represented by the variable b. You can use tuples to return multiple values from a function. Let's see how that works. I'm going to define a new function, which is called add, and subtract. It's going to take in two different arguments, a and b. Inside the function, I will define a sum, mySum, which is the sum of a and b. In addition, I'm going to define myDiff, which is a minus b. I will then return mySum and myDiff to the caller of the function. I do this using a tuple where the first object that I want to return is mySum, and the second object is going to be myDiff. Let's see how I would call this function. I'm first going to type the name of the function. Let's say my first argument is 20 and the second one is 15. Python returns a tuple object where the first number is 35, the sum of the two objects, and the second one is number 5, the difference between the two objects. Functions do not exist until Python reaches and runs the def statement. A function is not executed until the given function is called using the function name followed by parentheses syntax. The def statement creates an object and assigns it to a name. This means that we can later in the code reassign the function object to another name. We previously defined a function add. I can now type new add, and I can set that equal to add. I now have two different names for calling the function. I can either use add or I can use new add. Here add and new add are simply two different names for the same function. Arguments are passed by assigning objects to local names. Let's see how this works for a mutable object. I'm going to define a function called modify, which takes in one argument. I'm going to call that myList. MyList function will look at the first element of the list at location 0, and it will multiply its value by 10. That's all the function does. Let me then create a list L with the numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. I'm now going to call my modify function using L as the input argument. If I look at the contents of L, I'll see that the first number at location 0 has been multiplied by 10.